You're listening to the Mannered Podcast. Coming from the broadcast world, we're used to rules. There are standards, guidelines, regulations handed down by the federal government that tell us what we can say, how we can say it, and sometimes even when we can say it. Podcasting is different. It's far less restricted, and with fewer boundaries comes more freedom. But freedom doesn't remove responsibility, it shifts it. So when there's no governing body, what's left isn't law, it's manners. It's etiquette. It's awareness of the listener, the guest, and the moment. Today on Mannered, we're joined by someone who understands how to walk that line. Joe Massa has spent nearly 2 decades in radio, media, marketing, PR, and advertising. He runs Podtopia, where he helps podcasts grow with intention, connecting hosts with high-quality guests and helping voices cut through the noise. He's also the host of The Measuring Post, a podcast built around personal growth, meaningful conversations, and stories that actually stay with you. In a podcast world governed by less law and more by manners, Joe understands what still matters. Joe, welcome to Mannered.
And the crowd goes wild. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Manners are very valuable on and off the microphone. But again, podcasting, as you mentioned, does have that freedom of a little extra wiggle room, which is great. But it's important to know how to communicate that and still do it with a level of respect and sort of a clarity.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting here right now in my underwear. So
it's a good look without having a camera on. Audio does have its benefits.
Well, Joe, seriously, thank you so much for joining me. I guess to get us started here, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Podtopia, the Measuring Post podcast, and then, your background in the broadcast arena as well.
Yeah, so it started, like you said, a little over 20 years ago at this point, which is devastating to say out loud because I feel like a grandpa. I got a kid in college now. But, about 20 years ago, got into the Denver radio scene and really had this desire to be on air. And from, even high school age, I knew that this is what I wanted. So I went through the gauntlet, started under the promotions tent, as you know, and worked my way up, became the overnight guy, became the midday guy, worked in FM, worked in AM, ran an online station. Then I was syndicated nationwide via satellite through Westwood One and local radio networks. It was in about 170 cities nationwide, and really got to this point where I felt really, fulfilled. I finally kind of made what I wanted. But again, as you sort of mentioned in your intro, I was really limited in what I could talk about and not talk about. And I was talking about like country music, which is not my favorite. Not that I have anything against it, but that's just not what I was passionate about. But I'm doing, radio 7 days a week. And I'm talking about, modern country music and love songs and crap that I don't really care about. Mm-hmm. So, it got to the point where I was kind of getting, I was stalling out with my passion for it. So as I got, a family, married and kids growing up, I sort of realized that radio also wasn't, financially cutting all of the corners I needed. I was not making bills and stuff. So I decided to supplement my income. I started a DJ business. So I was doing trivia and karaoke and weddings and all this. So then the money was good, but then my time was gone. Because I was working 2 jobs to make one income essentially. Yep. So I stepped away from the radio world per se. I never quite left. I always had my foot in the door, but I went into the mortgage industry and did finance and IT and was just trying to find ways to take care of the family a little better. But I quickly realized that I wanted to get back into broadcasting in some capacity. So with the evolution of the technology and everything that's coming out with, all the new platforms, podcasting seemed like a natural evolution. So in a very long-winded answer, that's sort of how I started doing podcasting. I didn't want to go back into traditional FM radio. So podcasting with the freedom of it and sort of the luxury of being able to control it, that's where I decided to go. And the Measuring Post was born. And the idea behind the Measuring Post is when we grew up, there was a 2x4 in the basement where Dad would measure our height. It was the Measuring Post.
Okay.
So we always measure ourselves quantitatively, like how tall you are, how much money you make, how old you are, but never qualitatively, like your maturity, your empathy, your integrity. So The show is about finding ways to measure and grow those characteristics instead of saying, well, now I'm making a bunch of money and now I lost a bunch of weight. Those are great things, but they don't change who your personality is. So it's all about growing internally.
Love that.
But instead of just running a show, which is very difficult to start out, as you know, you're starting your own, people want to monetize it. There's things we're all looking for. And I went to go work for an international PR firm that I won't say the name, but the guy who ran it was a bum and wasn't taking care of his clients and was doing a lot of really bad things that I didn't want my name associated with. And I wasn't going to take my 20 years of contacts over to this guy for him to basically bend him over and take advantage of him. So
Yeah.
I said, why not do this for myself? So Podtopia was born, and we're creating a full ecosystem for creators and different collaborators that want to come together in a community and share ideas and work together and be on my show. I'll be on your show. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And we learn from each other. I don't view people in the space as competition. There's enough room for all of us. Instead, if you're further along than I am, I want to learn from you and work with you.
Yeah.
If you're coming up underneath me and you want to learn, reach out to me and use me as a resource. And then, everything in between. That's sort of where we're at with this.
Wow. You hit the nail on the head with the fact on the competition level of things. Coming from the broadcast background myself, as you know, broadcast is incredibly competitive. There's not 1 inch in the space where someone isn't trying to squeeze in and knock you out. Where one of the biggest differences I've noticed in the podcast community is that camaraderie between everybody, like reaching out like, hey, great podcast, I'd love to be a guest, or I'd love to help you out with this. And it really is a cool space for the fact that there's a lot of help and things like that in that. So it's incredible that what you've done already in that space. And you're my guest today because you do know both worlds so perfectly. Broadcast, podcast. And so I'm hoping on this podcast, you can help me understand the difference between, because a large part of this show is, knowing where that tightrope is to walk. I have this broadcast brain. So a lot of the things I do on this are, with years of experience in broadcast, but I also want to spread my wings and fly into the podcast world. So I guess with that being said, what's the same? What's different?
Yeah, and you're very accurate with what you said about like the competition in radio. We're all going for listener shares in radio. It's who's got the most viewers and tuning in and Nielsen ratings and all these things that really make a big difference that you can't really get those metrics for podcasting. Obviously, you can look at your hosting platform, see the downloads. You can see how many people are engaging with your YouTube or Instagram clips. And those are all great sort of indicators of where your show's level of success is and downloads. And really the thing that I think is most important in podcasting versus radio is you can really feel the engagement difference. Now, when you're on the radio and I'm talking, this is 107.1 and we're talking whatever that's on the day, I can't really gauge if anyone's listening to me and following through with what I told them, or if I'm talking about the next Taylor Swift album. Is that something you can quantify or measure? Not really. But if I'm talking about my brand, my business, I'm selling a course, I'm giving you advice on try this product and use my link. Those are things that I can see a little more clearly. I can say, okay, 90 people from my podcast downloaded using my affiliate link or whatever that looks like. Those are ways that you can measure the difference in engagement. So I always talk to people who want to be on podcasts and they go, well, I only want to be on a show with, it's in the top 10 of the business category, whatever category they're in.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's sort of break that down. Is it because of your vanity? Those are ego numbers, right? So is it more valuable to be on a show that's in the top 10 that maybe has 10,000 downloads per episode, but 1% of that population of those listeners engage with your brand, or maybe none of them do? But yeah, I was on Mel Robbins' show. I was on this great, huge show, but none of their audience tuned in or really worked with you. Is that more valuable than going to a much smaller show that has the right demographic and target audience, that 30 to 40% of those listeners engage with your brand? Now, all of a sudden, maybe they only got 1,000 downloads per episode, but 300 of them are working with you now. What's the more valuable piece of the puzzle? So I always tell people to really try to dial into the engagement side of things. Don't worry so much about the vanity numbers, like 1 million people were going to follow me all of a sudden. But who cares if they follow you? 1 million robots can follow you. If they don't buy your product, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So the difference between radio and podcasting, specifically for me, it's the level of engagement. And podcast listeners are much more hyper in tune with your brand because they found your show, they downloaded it, they consumed 30 to 60 minutes of it. They're likely a good buying avatar for whatever you're talking about or selling. It's not like the radio where it just whatever's on is on. So
Absolutely. Yep. I feel the same way. I was just about to say the same thing. The big difference in my experience with broadcasts and podcasts is with podcasts, it's a poll where, people are actually seeking you out. They're interested in your show specifically to take that time, however long the length is to invest in it basically. So, broadcast is more of reaching that mass audience all at the same time. And whereas there's definitely a passion behind that listenership, a lot of times people are more in tune with you personally and what you have to say. So, which is why you're here today, and how that relates to manners is, without the federal government, really monitoring and telling us what we can and can't say, what responsibilities do you feel we have as podcasters to our audience? What are our guidelines?
yeah, I think that comes down, and it's a great question. And really, it does come down to governing yourself a little bit. Like, I could go on and say really racy things, say very vulgar things. I could go on and have racist opinion, a sexist opinion, or whatever I wanted because no one's really regulating me. But that's not who internally I am as an individual. So I
Mhm.
don't want to present myself on a show saying things that don't align with my values and my core simply because I can.
Yep.
Like, I could go out there and just drop a bunch of F bombs right now, but that's not how I talk in real life.
Yeah.
So, and a bit of that comes from the media training. Like, I'm very cautious about saying certain words because it's
Yeah.
literally pre-programmed into my brain
Same.
not to say the naughty words,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
7 words you can't say on broadcast television. So
Yep.
there's an underlying truth to that, but I think it's our responsibility to do the research to present the most valid information that you can.
Mhm.
And to really, almost like a journalistic sort of approach, a good journalist is going to report the right truth, the facts, regardless of your personal bias.
Yeah.
If I'm spinning a point or I'm sharing a story, certainly on something current event based, do it with integrity,
Yeah.
because the people that are going to tune into your show, they will see through your bull crap if you're not doing it with integrity.
Yeah.
And then you'll find the trolls on the internet are really loud, and they get there really quickly. So
Yeah.
if all of a sudden you're spewing a bunch of crap that's not real or legitimate, you're going to hear it immediately.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get trolled and clowned and cancel culture and the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
nine.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we don't
just
wanna
do
get
it the right
canceled.
way so you don't have to go through that head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to get canceled. And it's funny to hear you say that because, another thing that happens on podcast is whatever subject matter you're covering, you kind of by default become this recognized expert. And it's really funny being the Mannered podcast because, and this is a really weird example to use, but you remember Harry Houdini, the magician?
I do.
And I don't know if this is true or not, but I had heard him. The myth was that he died because he was punched in the stomach from someone who's like, "Oh, you're magic," because he did like some kind of magic trick where he was punched by a professional boxer in the stomach and was Man of Steel and that sort of thing. So some random guy on the street came up and punched him in the stomach and he like died. That's what I heard. That might not be true. And once again, here we go with one of these etiquette things. It's like I'm telling stuff that maybe we don't know is true out there. But my point of this is, in being the Mannered podcast, the whole reason I started this is because it's a personal journey of my own. I am the captain of not knowing what to do and making every interaction in life awkward because I don't know the proper etiquette sometimes or manners involved. So I thought this would be a fun exploration. But people hear Mannered. I'm throwing out some manners and etiquette advice on social media and things like that. So people are now deeming me as this expert in etiquette. And I had a couple people just within the past couple weeks reach out and they're like, "Hey, Sean, what should I do in this scenario?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'll put some research to that, and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. But just so you know, out there listening, I'm doing this because of my own personal growth in the mannered space. But I'm bringing up this topic because of the responsibility we have as taking ownership of these topics. People believe us. This is the proper manners and etiquette, and I can tell you a lot of my information comes from research.
Yeah, but those are the best type of shows, in my opinion. It's the person they're walking the walk. Like when you think of somebody that's teaching, like, if you're suffering from addiction and you go to a rehab facility, those guys are all guys that are former addicts.
Mhm.
They've walked the walk. They've been in your shoes. You don't want somebody from their perch preaching to you, telling you what, you already know. You want somebody that's been on those streets, that's done that work, somebody that's learning manners. You're doing the work right now and you're sharing your journey. That's a really great way to make yourself that thought leader. And that's how people connect with you. When they go, this guy maybe doesn't have it all figured out, but he's actually doing the work. It's the guy that plays baseball every day and practices every day. It's mind blowing that he got good at baseball. No, it's not. He put in the work.
Yeah.
You're putting in the work to be great at manners and you're sharing your journey along the way. That makes you that thought leader. And one other thing to kind of backtrack to what the difference between radio and podcasting is evergreen. Podcasts can be evergreen. So you can put this up on YouTube or Spotify and it'll sit there forever and ever. It's not a live broadcast like on radio where it's the afternoon drive on Friday, the 24th, and whatever I say, that's gone in the ether after that. This is recorded. You can repurpose it into reels, into quote graphics, audiograms, blog posts. Now you're taking one piece of content, like a conversation we're having. We're going to turn this into 15 pieces of content that now you can put in your newsletter, your website, your social media platforms. This then becomes the biggest piece of your marketing funnel. Podcasting is the biggest piece of your marketing funnel. Don't sleep on email, newsletters, and marketing. Don't sleep on podcasting. Those two things, if you get really good at it, that's where you're going to make your name. That's where you're going to find your audience. That's where you're going to sell your courses, your products, your brand, whatever you're working on. Touch points. You need to be on their feed, on their social media platforms. You need to be in their inbox. You need to be on their airwaves. Put it all together and you got a heck of a good strategy.
Absolutely. And you touched on something that just as you said it, I realized like really what the whole point of, when we talk about that invisible governing thing, I think it is the fact that it has shelf life, which that in itself creates this responsibility for us because, and maybe that's why the federal government is overseeing, broadcasts so heavily because it is lost in the ether. You can say something and it's gone. You can't grab and hold on to it unless you're physically recording it. But in podcasts, maybe that is what holds us responsible a little bit, is to know that what we say is put out there, it stays out there and can be found and that sort of thing. And so just, knowing that, that is something that will hold you from, not being yourself or saying something outrageous or inciting dangerous rhetoric or things like that, where, we know these things happen out there. But, you saying that makes a lot of sense that in itself can be kind of that invisible guideline.
It's sort of the old adage, whatever you put on the internet stays there, right? If you drop that one mean tweet 10 years ago, even if you deleted it instantly, 90 people screenshotted that bad boy. So there's no getting, if you think something is worthy of being on the internet, listen to it before you publish. And and I'm not saying it might not be great, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But again, if you're out there spewing misinformation, it's gonna blow up in your face. And if you're out there being negative and doing damaging things, even more so. So really be careful of what you put out in your content, but do it like deliberately. Like have a purpose behind your podcast and make it something you're passionate about or you're actively working on. Like for you, you're actively working on being more, better etiquette in certain social situations or in certain arenas of life. That's a great skill set and it's a unique way to have a podcast, but it's probably something that's not going to run out of like content for you. You can work on this for years and still not have it figured out. But if all of a sudden you're like, and in my podcast course, the Podcast Accelerator, which you actually went through, I talk about finding your niche, but not niching down so far either. Like if you're going to make a podcast for left-handed pygmy farmer Germans who play pickleball, you're going to run out of content really quickly.
I would listen to that.
But you're only 2 episodes because after that you're out of guys to interview. So, you want to have something that you can passionately talk about for years and years to come, but something that you actually want to become the expert in. Like you could become the guy. And then, people do reach out to you. Ask Sean Rhodes, how do I handle this situation? Start writing blog posts, SEO keywords, backlinks. Build your brand authority. People will come to you when they know that you're the guy for manners.
All right. So speaking of podcasts and things, what are some of your personal favorites out there?
So I'm a big proponent because my show is one of self-development. I really like shows in that arena because I'm really always trying to be the best version of myself. And I do go on personal journeys where like I try things and then I share them with my audience. And if they want to try it, great. If they don't, great. So anything in the self-development arena is great. I do like Huberman. I think he's just a brilliant man. So if you ever look at the Huberman Lab, is a great show. Shows like the bigger ones, Mel Robbins, they're great. They have when you have a multi-million-dollar budget, you put out amazing content, right?
Yeah.
And when you don't have to be the person that's producing, arranging, organizing, editing, publishing, hosting, all of a sudden you can delegate those things to, higher quality people behind the scenes.
Yep.
You're going to have better shows. But I like really looking at the shows that are just up and coming and the brand new ones.
Yeah.
So a lot of them will have no names that anyone listening would recognize. But the reason I like those shows is because there's people that have started years after I started, and they're doing things that I think are cooler than what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I like that because people are have ingenuity in them. Some people just do things a certain way that, like, I'm like, wow, I wish I would have thought of that. I could have been doing that for 5 years.
Yeah.
And this kid that started his podcast last Tuesday, I'm like, what the hell, bro? Like, you trying to make me look bad, bro? But the reality is it's people process things differently. People use different tools, and people have different resources and different skill sets. So I like looking at no-name shows, to be honest. I listen to a ton of no-name.
I mean, that's what I love about this community is there's so many interesting subjects that you can take a dive into. I wish I had this growing up. It's incredible for whatever hobby or interest you have. There's a podcast out there for it.
Yeah. And honestly, any topic. I mean, my brother is really big into collecting He-Man toys in his mid-40s.
Yeah.
But there is a humongous network of people that are into this.
Yeah.
Like you can, Dungeons and Dragons. Well, it doesn't matter. I got a show on our podcast network that's all about Transformers.
Really?
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's a tight-knit community of people that really like the same things you like. But, going back to like the Facebook groups and stuff, they're great to get inspiration. But part of the reason we built Podtopia Network also is when you go to those Facebook communities or LinkedIn groups and you like try to solicit a little bit, or you want to post your product in there, a lot of times they'll shut you down and they cancel you out and they'll pull your post down because they don't want you in there selling.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's why I'm in this group.
Yeah.
Like I'm in here to share my show and my brand and my coaching or whatever.
Yeah.
That's why Podtopia, we're the complete opposite of that. Come into my community and sell everything.
Yeah.
Don't be spammy and pushy.
Yeah.
But come in and tell me about your product. Tell me about your course. Tell me what you do. Connect with other people, because that's why I'm in this community. I'm not just in here to look at the owner of the group talk about, look how great I am.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I want people in there that make the group better and are actually there to work with each other and collaborate. So, join Podtopia Network and tell me what you do and sell your product. That's what this is all about.
I love it. Yep, absolutely. And definitely want to have touch points for people listening to connect with you after this. And I can tell you personally, Joe has helped me tremendously in my company, navigate this space, because it's, a big project for us. And Joe obviously has a wealth of information, but he's also a great guy, which is why he's on the Mannered podcast with me. And what are some things in podcasts that maybe turn you the wrong way? Maybe, you don't quite like when they do a certain thing. Is there anything that's a turnoff for you?
Well, I think it's really just a presentation, factor, I guess. Certain people present better, than others, but that might be a personal opinion where I just don't like this guy or gal, how they present their show. But condescending nature, this would fit in well with the mannered topic of your whole podcast. Don't treat people like they're dumb, or like don't talk condescendingly to people, especially if you're like, if I'm doing a self-development show and someone's on my show, I'm like, no, you still use that? No, like you should use my method. It's the only one that works. Yeah. There's no one way to do anything in the world. There's a million different ways to get to the same finish line. Respect people's journey. And if you see something that they're doing that maybe you feel like there's a better way, you can present it in a way that's constructive and not demeaning. I'm never going to look at someone and be like, oh, you're using that tool? Yeah, what is this, 2009? It's like, no, don't be a jerk. Teach people. We're here to educate and to share our experiences and our knowledge. And again, that's why I like watching other shows, even some that are brand new, because sometimes they're doing something. I go, man, I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 100 years, it feels like. So, learn from people and be willing to lead with value. And if you lead with value, I'm telling you, people will flock to you. It's not always, and don't always just open up and be like, okay, here's my podcast, here's my course, here's the link, buy it, and shoving that down their throat. Lead with value, teach. When you watch one of my episodes or one of my solo shows, I usually have a small call to action at the end, but I'm there to like give you something.
Yeah.
Like, look at this tool I just found. Check out what I just
Mhm.
built. This is awesome. This is why I think you should try it. Try it.
Yeah.
You know, and then do it or don't. But one thing for sure is that if you watch enough of my little videos, next time you've got a question about podcasting, I'll at least pop in your mind. Like,
Absolutely.
oh, I know this channel I could
Yep.
check out, or oh, I could reach out to Joe. Yeah, reach out
Yeah.
to me because I'm going to give you something without asking for something in return.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Big part of this show is those awkward moments, that happen from us just not knowing the right thing to do a lot of times. And you obviously growing in the space or watching others grow in the space. Do you have any kind of awkward moments that have come up with your own experience or others?
Yeah, if you're going to be a guest on a show, or if you're going to host guest on your show, before you go into that interview, some people do it live, some people like totally organic, impromptu. I like to sort of have a working outline up front so I can say, hey, Sean, you're coming on my show. Here's the 10 things I was thinking about talking about. Are you okay with these topics? Because some people want to keep certain things in their life private. Maybe you went through a terrible loss, or you are a struggling drug addict, and not you personally, but anyone in general. Maybe they don't want to share that information that raw right now. Maybe it's just not the right time for them. You can't unsay something once it happens. Now, we could just not air the episode if it's not live, right? Or like you could be like, hey, I don't want to talk about that. We'll cut that segment out.
Yep.
But you're gonna keep your interviewee more engaged if they know what they're walking into.
Yeah.
Like I've walked into some shows before where it's just like the gauntlet and you have no idea what to expect. And all of a sudden they're like, it's the hard questions.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, really? Like, walk me into something that I know what to expect,
Yeah.
but also then I'll feel like I prepared a little more. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to have a script and I don't need every question, written in black and white for me. But
Yeah.
also if we're going to talk about, quantum physics, give a brother a heads up so I can plan for it.
Yeah.
So I'm not walking in feeling like a dummy either.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear your thoughts on quantum physics.
They're really
but
small.
I didn't have that in the outline, so I won't ask.
That's
Okay?
it. If you would have prepared the outline a little more. I think you missed my quantum physics. It's very small. My knowledge, like quantumly small.
I do think your son might be able to handle that question, though.
I don't know where he came from. He's a mutant. Yeah, he just got his grades back. He's a 4.0 student at Colorado School of Mines for mechanical engineering, and I'm a podcaster, so he didn't learn that from me. I told him years ago, I said, you can't ask me for math help anymore. Like,
Oh, man.
I'm struggling with his 7th grade sister's, algebra.
Yeah.
Like, when do they start putting letters in math? Yeah, no. His math is bonkers. Yeah, like you're talking to the wrong dude.
Yeah. No.
You need microphone advice, you call me.
It's an incredible school. And, knowing your son from a young age, I kind of always knew, he's just always been a very bright kid. So, I am proud of him. I didn't have that.
When you first met him, he was probably 2 or 3 years old when we first met. He's 18 now.
Yeah.
Bigger than me, more handsome, smarter. I'm just glad he's got my last name because everything else, he's a total upgrade.
Oh, that's incredible. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And that goes back to the manners of things. And that's not just for podcasts. That's really kind of anything that you're having a professional join you is, try and prepare for them, do your research, and give them, a good stage to walk out onto. So
And also don't waste their time. Like you got to understand, a lot of these people that maybe having a podcast is sort of an icebreaker where I can say, hey, I'm really working in the quantum physics field. I'm going to bring on a great leader in the space. Don't invite them to your show and then look like a clown. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you have to be perfect or have this phenomenal, operation, but also don't be so underprepared. And like the guy comes in or the gal comes in and like, what is this? Like amateur hour?
Yeah.
Like bring a level of professionalism to anything you do, whether you're the janitor or the host of the biggest show on talk television.
absolutely.
Be a professional and prepare in a way that lets people know that you're taking them seriously and you're valuing their time.
Yeah.
If I expect you or I'm encouraging you to give me an hour of your time to talk to me,
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that I bring value to that person too.
Yeah.
Like you're coming on and doing me a favor on being on my show. I'm going to make it worth your while and we're going to create a value for you to be here.
Yep.
And we're going to give you a platform to share your knowledge with the audience that's important to you.
Yeah, that's great. Another thing I was thinking, Joe, and now I'm feeling bad because this wasn't in my outline, but I'm going to ask a question. And
I'll take a one ringer from you.
This is just the one blunt ringer, but it just popped into my mind as far as, we're talking about manners and etiquette. And last week I had Lori Kirkland, who is with Deep Human X, and helping businesses with innovate within the AI age and that sort of thing. And I just started thinking, as far as manners and etiquette go in the podcasting space, what are your thoughts on AI podcasts?
So it's a double-edged sword. AI, I think, is a very valuable tool. It can be great for creating your outlines. I have an automated AI pipeline for production that I use, but it doesn't eliminate the need for humans, right? It just takes away some of the busy work. Do I want to manually transcript, or can I let AI do my transcripts? Do I want to take those transcripts and then listen to them and then write out show notes, or can I have AI do that? So AI is a valuable resource. It can eliminate a lot of busy work and a lot of repetitive work that's not skill based. Anybody could write show notes.
Yep.
Not everybody can talk about manners. You have to, not everyone can be Andrew Huberman and talk on a doctor level, a doctorate level.
Yeah.
But he's not the one writing his own show notes. Anyone could do that. A virtual
Yep.
assistant could do that. AI could do that. So
Yeah.
AI, people are worried, is AI going to replace my job? No, but people that know how to use AI will replace you
Yep.
more quickly than that. And AI, there's a lot of platforms and tools out there where they're trying to like eliminate the need for humans. Like, oh, this whole AI pipeline, it'll record it. You can use Synthesia and make a clone of yourself. You can clone your voice.
Yep.
You could just type a script and it'll be automated by the robot underlords, and that'll be, your podcast. Those are great and dandy if you want a 30-second sales, video or something.
Yep.
But if you want to make a real connection, you got to be the person behind the microphone.
Yeah.
You got to have get your hands, air quote, dirty a little bit. If you want to be the one that, I want you to reach out to engage with me.
Yep.
I can't have AI do all my work then.
Yeah.
I still got to have the human element. So I think it's a valuable resource, but don't let it replace creativity.
Absolutely. And that's how a lot of our conversation went last week. So it's good to hear you say that as well, because, I'm a fan of a few podcasts that are AI voice generated. There's this History Happened Today podcast where it's like, it sounds real, but I'm pretty sure it's an AI voice that's reading the whole thing.
Have you heard of Notebook LM? It's a Google.
No.
So it's owned by Google. It's Notebook LM. And it's a large language model, but essentially you can put up to like 100 different resources in it. Say, for instance, I want to learn how to be really great at SEO, search engine optimization. I can take 15 or 20 blogs that are written by, smart people.
Yeah.
I could take 15 or 20 YouTube videos, drop all those links into Notebook LM.
Yep.
It has one of the lowest hallucination rates of any AI, meaning it just spits out the facts. It doesn't get creative.
Oh, cool.
But what you can do then is you take all these resources, it'll go through them and consolidate everything, give you outlines, it'll give you mind maps. But then there's a feature where you can say, make this an audio podcast, and it takes its own Google AI brain, and it has a man's voice and a woman's voice, and they have like a podcast, and it sounds so human, realistic, it's bonkers.
Really?
You could pass it off as a podcast that was made by Bob and Jenny, and it's a computer, it's an AI-based thing.
Wow.
So the technology is getting so good that it can trick a lot of people. You got to be really careful of that. But I think if you're going to use that as like your, pipeline for content creation, be honest about it. Because if people find out later that that was from Notebook LM, they feel jilted a little bit. Like you duped them. You know what I mean? And it's because I took your advice, and this is completely fabricated. And I'm not saying everyone, some people don't care. They're just like, I just want the content.
Yeah, just want the info.
But check out Notebook LM. It's great for deep research on things. Like I use it sometimes for my show research, or like if I'm doing a masterclass on SEO. That's the reason I brought that up, is I'm doing one right now.
Yeah.
Put all these resources in there, and it breaks it down, and it makes your research so much cleaner and easier on you without feeling like I got to watch 94 YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And then I consolidate that information. No, just let that this is where AI can shine.
Yeah.
It can eliminate 15 hours of watching YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's where I think, pulling this all together, I think it's exactly like you said. If it's what the audience expects, then you're being authentic, as long as you're not hiding behind like, hey, this is a real guy, and that sort of thing. I think you're fine. A large part of this show isn't one of the staples of etiquette is just being authentic, and we started the show, you talking about that fact of you're who you are behind the microphone. You're not trying to be someone different, which is, why you're not sitting in your underwear and throwing F-bombs everywhere. So
Yeah, but going back to that conversation we had before we, started this interview, when I first got into radio, that was sort of my mentality where I felt like I had to put on a show, and it was
mhm.
the 1980s radio, turn up the knob and rip it off and volume strength. And, but like that was sort of the theatrics of radio
Yeah.
back then,
Yep.
where it was over the top and it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I had to talk like a deep voice and blah, blah, blah. But
Oh,
then people were like, you sound like, what are you doing? You look and sound like a clown. But then when you eliminate sort of that pressure off your own shoulders and you just talk about what you want to learn yourself,
yeah.
you come across as not only as a thought leader, but you're inquisitive, you're natural, you're
Yeah.
organic, you're human,
Yeah.
right? The AI is getting good, but
Yeah.
it still lacks that human touch. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And
Yep.
don't lose the human touch. It's
Yeah, the
important.
human spice is an important spice. So
It's a tasty one.
absolutely. Gosh, as you did your voice there, I totally had a flashback when we used to work together. And Joe does the most amazing movie guy voice ever. I would have him do these spec spots for clients where I would have him like create fake trailers for their business where he's using the movie voice. Can you do a Mannered Podcast movie guy voice right now?
Coming next weekend on the Mannered Podcast, one man, one mission, one unforgettable summer romance. That was off script. I didn't have anything prepared for that. We used to do those all the time.
Man,
And
I
I've
love
done
it.
some movie trailers. I actually did a trailer for Legos video games
Yeah.
years ago. And it was just, I don't know how you figured out you can do that. But, God bless Don LaFontaine.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, sir.
Yeah.
He was the original. This summer, one man, the unforgettable time of your life. And just who knew that being raspy could be so beneficial for the radio world?
It's so good. Every voice I
Theater
do.
of the mind.
Yeah. I'm guilty of every voice I do sounds vaguely like Sean Connery. So it's like Morgan Freeman. No, sounds like Sean Connery. I am the last one. Yeah.
I'll take swords for 900. That's S words, Mr. Connery. Swords and S word. The old Saturday Night Live skits. But
Oh, I love it.
the beauty of being able to do certain voices and things like that outside of entertainment is it really is theater of the mind. That's one thing I really got into radio. And, it's one thing to be like doing a live broadcast where you're the jock, talking about the songs or the lifestyle or whatever. But when you make ads, radio ads specifically, when you're doing YouTube ads or TV ads, they get to see it, right? So you don't have to be as subtle.
Yeah.
But when you're like doing a radio ad and you got to drop little bird.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a bird. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, there's a plane. So you got to create that visual with audio.
Yep.
That's a lot of fun. That was always
It
my
is.
favorite producing audio spot. Forget about it.
Oh,
Theater
yeah.
of the mind it's a fun game.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm in the business. One of my, favorite things to tell a lot of clients is exactly what you just said. Is like when we talk about, the production cost of doing a TV ad and that sort of thing. And I used to use the example of, and I think I stole this from somebody, through training over the years, but there used to be this example. It's like, okay, yeah, if we were to make a commercial of them building the world's largest banana split with Chinook helicopters, flying in toppings and carrying these bananas on semi trucks to the Grand Canyon, it's going to be a hefty bill, for the production costs. Whereas, that theater of the mind, the sound of chopper blades and, wind blowing, and then the sergeant yelling is like, "Yo, hoist up the banana." It's like,
That's a huge banana. Wow.
the squirt sound effects, putting on the toppings. I mean, it's my favorite part about
A lot
audio.
easier on the wallet.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be done for a very small fraction of the cost, and it's fun. It's why I still to this day I love audio. It's a powerful thing, and with that power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man wise,
And you need good manners.
yeah, gotta have good manners because we can use theater of the mind to really convince our audiences of a lot of things. So we gotta have a backbone of etiquette.
It's a huge
here.
banana.
No bananas were harmed in the making of this commercial.
In a world where bananas are the giantest in the world. Coming
Oh man,
to the Grand Canyon, the world's largest banana split.
I could seriously sit here all day and be like, all right, Joe, here's the idea for the movie. I need you to do the movie voice for this. So.
Sorry, honey, won't be home tonight. Sean Rhodes is making me work.
Well, it's funny. We're talking about commercials and forms of marketing. And, one of the hardest things as I jumped into this podcast arena for me personally, I've spent my career promoting others, and helping them craft advertising and that sort of thing. But when it comes to my own show, the Manner Podcast, one of my biggest challenges is that self-promotion thing. You're really like putting yourself out there. I mean, this is a topic that's like close to me. I used a lot of my personal experiences, so it has been trembling to get on to that social environment and promote myself or wherever it's been. So any recommendations for that?
Yeah, it's you hear the word imposter syndrome a lot with a lot of people that are putting themselves. This is a vulnerable thing to do, to put yourself on camera or audio, and especially when you're sharing something like, "Hey, I screwed up really bad recently, and that's why I'm doing this, and I'm trying to like be better."
Yeah,
so putting yourself out there, it's daunting. And people feel like weird, like I don't want to talk about myself. Well, you kind of have to, you get over that at some point, or if someone really likes your show and they go, "Oh, you're great," and it's like, dude, it's kind of creepy feeling sometimes too. Like I don't want to be told I'm great. Like I kind of suck.
Yeah.
Like, don't blow me. Don't give my head up too much air.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that you're speaking a truth that's internal to you. That there's probably a lot of people that would benefit from.
Yeah.
So take away the awkwardness of being like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about me." Just remember that you're doing this for a reason. And if you're helping one person outside of your own sphere of influence, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're creating an environment or a platform for somebody else to come in and go, "I needed to hear this today."
Yeah.
And if I can help that one person who I've never met and they heard a piece of my advice and go, "Man, that really resonated with me." And if I got to be a little embarrassed sometimes to do that, it's a worthy trade-off in my opinion. So just don't overthink it. Don't let your highs get too high and your lows get too low.
Yeah.
Sort of keep an even keel the whole time. And you get over that pretty quickly. Once you do it long enough, you go, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's, I imagine anyone that follows me on Facebook is like, I haven't seen this guy post anything in 20 years. And now he's like, oh, talking about manner.
Now he won't stop. What's with all this banana talk?
But that's really good advice. Thank you, Joe. That makes me feel better. So
yeah, and again, the posting is weird too, because part of doing this, you have to be active on social media. I am not a big social media.
Yeah,
like
me either.
And like all of a sudden, I got like 30-some thousand followers on Instagram. They're probably all half of fake, anyways. But when my daughter, who's like 12, she's like, well, "How are you legit on social media?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even like it. I don't like posting on there. I don't want to be like feel like I'm in the spotlight. But then when I'm same thing, like I don't post regularly, but now all of a sudden every week I post 5 times about shows I'm on, and I'm like, it kind of is a whirlwind. Even though I spent so many years on air, even when I was on air syndicated on satellite radio, I never posted about it very often.
Yeah.
It's just like the people listening in the local FM markets knew my voice or knew my name. Yeah. But my little 900 Facebook friends, they're, mostly from my high school.
Yeah.
They're like, "We don't care, bro." So posting those things can feel very unauthentic if that's not who you were beforehand. Yeah. But again, I've had people, at one point I used to do the feel good of the day post. And it was just on Facebook. I would just find some random story that was like made me feel good. And I would just post it. I'd do it 3 or 4 times a week. Yeah. And then I stopped doing it just because I just got tired of it. And I had people that I didn't even know were following my page reach out like, what happened, dude? Where's those feel goods, man? Like it was a pick me up for those people. And I was like, wow,
that's cool.
It was cool to hear. And some of them were like, like one of my best friend's wife, who I've known for 30 years, was like, "Start posting again." And I was like, "Sorry, Nicole."
Yeah, I like that.
But she enjoyed it. So it was like, all of a sudden, that's your motivation is you realize that maybe it might seem silly to you, or it might not feel like you're connecting with anybody, but there's always that person behind the scenes that's really waiting for that post, and they need it. Yeah. So don't be selfish.
I like
Have good manners in post.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's great advice. And I might, if you're okay, I might take a version of that and come up.
I think you should. That could. You just demonstrated great manners by asking me up front.
Hey, that's what I do. Yeah.
Your show's already paying off. Yeah. No, yeah.
All right, crossing this one off on the
There you
list.
go.
Yep. There
There's
we
literally
go.
nothing I say that you can't use on your own show. And that's kind of the point of doing podcasting.
Yeah.
Like it's, hey, I do a lot of stupid stuff and I need to work on my growth as a human often.
Mhm.
So I'll be the one that puts myself out there in front of the crowd and be the martyr or the dummy
Yeah.
and learn from learn from me. That's
Yeah.
like the point.
Yeah.
Right? You don't make my same mistake. If you can avoid what I just did, please God, don't do what I just did.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I did it and what was wrong about it, and then you can learn from that
Gosh,
and learn
so-
from my folly.
Yes. So true. I
Mm-hmm.
spend 90% of my life. I mean, that's a large part of my job now is, training salespeople countrywide is, I'm here to help you not make all the mistakes I've made.
Yeah.
I'm not coming from a position of, I'm not on a horseback here telling you to dig in the trenches.
Yeah.
I'm telling you because I don't want you to suffer from the pain.
Don't waste 9 years
Yeah.
doing what I used to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a reason why I read a lot.
Yeah.
Like read an autobiography about somebody
Mhm.
because you're getting a lifetime of knowledge in 200 or 300 pages.
Yeah.
And you can't. I don't want to go through a whole lifetime to learn what Marcus Aurelius learned.
Yeah.
Reading his book Meditations, which was a journal, it wasn't even
Mhm.
a book, has taught me some of my favorite lessons in life.
That's great.
But I don't want to spend 80 years in ancient Rome learning those things. Instead, I could just read his book, or anytime you can learn from somebody's experiences.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best things about podcasting too, like having a conversation like this. I love when I bring somebody on. One of my favorite shows from this season was a guy named John Graham, and the episode was called Badass Grandpa, because that's what he called himself. He was like this skinny little kid from a podunk town that went on to be like a U.S. dignitary, was in in World War II and the Korean War. He climbed the north face of Mount Denali, the first part. I'm like, you, who are you?
wow.
You're a wild animal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he was 82 and he's just
Wow.
this calm, chill dude, but he's like, I'm a badass grandpa. I'm like, you know who you are.
Yeah.
But it was cool listening to an hour conversation with him
Mhm.
and just listening to this guy's life experiences. Like, I really need to do more
Yeah.
with myself.
Yep.
But it was great just to see what he went through and to learn that experience. And I got to digest it in 47 minutes.
I love it.
It was awesome.
Probably the best advice, well, up there in the top 10 I've ever received in my life was from my mentor, Bob Gorley, who was the GM of Clear Channel, Colorado Springs. But it was like my first week in radio. I'm this young, wet behind the ear kid in like a $50 suit walking around the sales floor. And BG comes up to me and he goes, Sean, there's a book called How to Be Successful. Have you read it? And I stare at him. I was like, no. And he looked at me and he goes, why the fuck not?
That's great advice. Read.
It seriously was. It was at that point I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like everything I want to do in a life, there's a book for it. There's a guy like Joe Massa that is training people how to do it. So, from that point on, I knew anything I wanted to do, find the expert, read the book, watch the video, the tutorial, whatever it is, there's people to help you out there.
Yeah, and I really want for the measuring post, Podtopia Network's sort of my main bread and butter. I run a company that teaches podcasting, but my own personal show is where my passion is, the measuring post, right? And I'm actually rolling out a program in Q1. It's called the Bandit Method. And the Bandit Method is essentially, it's called that because you have to steal back what's important to you. So it's broken into chapters and segments. So the first one rolling out is the Time Bandit. You got to steal your time back because it's really easy to get sucked in to the doom scroll or the Netflix and chill or I got to work 19-hour days. You get sucked into that. So you have to program your time a little more intentionally. Yeah. And one of the things that is really important that I think is valuable is to allot time for yourself for learning and for growth and reading. Specifically. So that's one way that I really like to consume content is reading or watching podcasts or learning audiobooks, whatever it is. But if I actually put in my calendar, like on these, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., I don't check emails. I don't social media. I don't work. I read. I consume information. I learn. Yeah. It not only creates intentionality in my day-to-day life, but it gets the creative juices rolling. All of a sudden, when I read a great book or I read an awesome chapter or heard a great, podcast on somebody doing something, it can reinvigorate you
Yeah.
in whatever you're trying to accomplish. So
Yep.
always learn from other people, and always, don't take it like I know so much. I know enough now to know that I don't really know anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
There's always somebody that knows more than you, that's bigger than you, smarter than you, stronger than you, makes more than you. Don't compare yourself to people. Learn from people. Use
Yeah.
people as resources.
Yep.
And like, I want to learn from your sales experience.
Yep.
You've been doing sales longer than I have. I could learn from you.
Mhm.
I've been doing podcasting longer. You can learn from me.
Yep.
We can learn from each other and not see each other as competition.
Yep. One of my favorite sayings is live like you're going to die tomorrow and learn like you're going to live forever. So, words to live by. But speaking of time bandits, in being conscious of our listeners' time here, I think we're gonna, start wrapping things up. But Joe, as we're heading off into not the ether, but the shelf of the podcast system, what's maybe one or a couple pieces of etiquette advice for podcasters out there, or even podcast listeners?
I think, I'll give you one of each then. We'll give you one for the podcast listener and one for the podcast host. For the podcast listener, be kind to the podcast host, right? You don't have to enjoy their content. If you decide to tune into somebody's show and they're trying to get better at it, give them the grace and the ability to learn. And if you have something to say or would like to be constructive with your criticism, do so in a polite manner.
Yeah.
Telling somebody they suck and being mean to them and being belittling and demeaning and you're stupid and your show is terrible. What does that benefit? All that does is make you look like a troll and a jerk.
Yeah.
And most people are going to look at you and be like, I don't know who this guy is, but he sucks.
Yeah.
So don't be that guy or gal. If you got something to say it with courtesy and with the idea of what you just said earlier too. This is a vulnerable thing that we do, putting ourselves on these shows and talking about our failures and disappointments and our lessons learned the hard way. So if I'm going to be willing to put myself out there, just, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
That's an easy win to just like, the old saying, if you don't got something nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Right.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
do that. So be nice. And as a podcast host, I would say that, we kind of touched on it earlier, but if you're going to put information out there, make sure that you're doing it with the intention of being accurate.
Yeah.
Don't just spew crap out of your mouth because it's like, this came across my mind when I was in the shower yesterday. I'm going to say it. No, like if I'm going to try to teach or lead with value, do it from a place of like just being really authentic with it.
Yeah.
And do it with the place of sincerity.
Yeah.
Like I'm really trying to learn myself. So if I find something that's really beneficial to me, I will share it genuinely with my audience and not condescendingly or like ill-advised. I'm not going to just tell you to do something I wouldn't do myself.
Absolutely. Which you just reminded me, if you're listening, double check on how Harry Houdini died. I just spouted that one off the top of my head today. So I don't want to be peddling false information out there.
He got kicked by a mule, flew into the sun. We got to do our research.
Harry Houdini is still alive somewhere. And he's like, gosh, dang it, Sean.
Him and Tupac and Elvis are in Venezuela eating banana splits. No,
I'm still trapped in this box, and this guy's saying I got punched to death.
These are the kind of things you could fact check quite literally with a Google search.
Yeah, absolutely. So my intention wasn't to lead you awry, but check that one out. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being my guest. Not only for being my guest, but thank you so much for helping me get this podcast rolling, for helping my company. You've been a tremendous resource, and what you're doing is simply amazing. I encourage everyone out there listening, look into Podtopia. Check out Joe's podcast, The Measuring Post. It's phenomenal. Definitely a lot of personal growth and things that you'll hear and experience with his show. So thank you. Thank you for what you do for humanity. Thank you for what you do for the podcast industry. Joe, you're an amazing guy.
And the crowd's still going wild. No, thank you for having me. Honestly, I love doing these, conversations. I think they matter. I think we learn a lot from each other. And this is how you can share this information in today's age, day and age. So yeah, anyone listening, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Joe Massa. Find me at podtopianetwork.com. If you have questions, you want to learn, you want to talk, you want to be on podcast, you want to start a podcast, you just want to do movie man voices on the phone with me. I'm wide open. I'm easy to get a hold of. But again, it's shows like yours that make this worthwhile because we learn manage together. We grow together. So thanks for having me on, brother.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. So thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening to the Mannered Podcast.